Hotep family, a blessing on your evening, and welcome once again to Amani Speaks Radio. We're going to open up, as we always do, with the proclamation, for there can be no faith more true or just than to know the things that are, and to acknowledge thanks for all things to one that made them, which thing I shall not cease continually to do. Ha, and amen. Praise be to amen. This show today, titled The Path of Peace. And, you know, I really was thinking about this show. I was thinking about it a lot and how I would present it and bringing the people into the test session and getting an understanding of its origins and where it came from. And so what I thought would be best is to go back in history and give you some background on the culture of the Natesh session. As I said before, religion, we have four parts: culture, economics, spirituality, and practice. To give you culture of the Natesh session, as well as what is with us today in the form of Christianity, Judaism, and show you how these things came to pass and how they relate, and where we are now with the philosophies and the religion that we have now. So when I say this also, I want it to be understood that I do not debate. I am not a debater. I'm more here to deliver a message to let the people know what I have learned, what has been hidden from them, and what a lot of you probably know, and or some of you probably know, and how we can bring this thing together and heal ourselves from the damage that's been done. So while I appreciate the information and even criticism, I do not debate. I think there's a lot of people out there debating, but you can always listen to my talking points and research the information. My information typically is sound. If there's any errors, please let me know. You can always shoot me an email, or you can contact me on Facebook. But I do not debate, but I do want to be able to get the message out with as much clarity and correction as possible. So with that being said, I want to take us back I want to take us back to the time where, I guess you could say, people that we know as Israelites, what their history is, where they came from, and how that relates to the Nile Valley. This is very important because it speaks to the current religion today and its origins, be it Christianity or Judaism or in Islam as well. But we're not really going to talk about Islam tonight. We're going to focus more on Christianity and Judaism in relation to the Nile Valley and its spirituality and its philosophy. The group of people called the Hyksos, the Hittites, and the Amorites moved from Mesopotamia down to Canaan and the Fertile Crescent into the northern part of the Nile Valley, or which would have been called Lower Egypt, because the Nile runs in the opposite direction. So you might think of north as lower and south as upper. And so these people migrated in. You might want to look at them as immigrants or immigrated into the Nile Valley because of pasturing lands. They were herders. They were sheep herders. They were goat herders, and so they were looking for pasturing lands. And so they were, to some degree, more or less invited in the beginning. And part of this was because for money reasons. Around this time, the Nesu, or kingship, or what most people are familiar with as Pharaoh, started to become, I guess the best word would be, corrupt. And as a result of this corruption, they began to sell off farmlands to these shepherds, and that way they could charge them tax and be able to make money. This caused a lot of discourse and a lot of issue in the kingdom, and it hurt a lot of the general population. But unfortunately, like I said, due to corruption in the with the king as well as with the priesthoods, this went on for some time, and this went on for about 100 years. And as corruption continued in the government, these shepherds, the Hyksos, the Hittites, and the Amorites, so to speak, started to gain power. They started to gain influence. They started to gain money, and as a result of that, they took over the political aspect of the lower kingdom of Egypt, or the upper Nile Valley region, and an area predominantly back then, and you have to forgive me for not knowing what it is called today, but the name would be Tanis. If you remember Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, this is where they were looking for the Ark in Egypt, in Tanis. And so they were there and around the 15th dynasty and onward to the 17th dynasty of Egypt. And what I'm giving you is the Cliff Notes version of this. So there's a lot of stuff in between, but we've only got a 30-minute show, so I can't tell you the whole story. So they end up getting kicked out by our brothers and sisters from Nubia. The brothers and sisters from Nubia come up from Upper Egypt into Lower Egypt, remove what are called the Shepherd Kings, or the foreign rulers, and reestablish the Nesu, or the kingship, back on the throne with an indigenous or natural person. But there's still a problem of corruption within the Amen priesthood, and steering away from the original teachings and going into idolatry. What was really happening was an industry to develop different groups of, or different perspectives. Let me take it back a little bit. Egypt was always monotheistic. There was always the belief in Amen and the female aspect, Amenet. But most of the time, the creator, or the all in all, was referred to as Amen, the Father. And this was well known. It was monotheistic. But what would happen is you would have different divisions of Amen, and you had what was known as the main 8 and or the main 9, the Inid and the Akdad, and then you had different divisions under that. Initially, this was an attempt to try to explain the universe and creation, but what happened was, as a result of corruption and foreign people coming in and people starting to learn and understand these sciences, they wanted representations for themselves. And so in doing that, it became an industry to create demigods. And so you had a lot of different gods that had qualities of the original Aid or qualities of Amen and so on and so forth. And these were by different regions. So as a result of that, you have basically idol worship. And so a lot of different priesthoods were making a lot of money or becoming very wealthy as a result of this. And as a result of wealth came power. And so this created a lot of corruption all the way up to the kingship. And this corruption went on for a very long time. And even after they kicked out the Hyksos, whom, by the way, their, I guess you might say their god or their deity, better known as the Neter, was Set, which is where you get it, or Satuk, or is where you get the term Shaitan. That is the person that they worship. That was the person that they I guess you would say, you wanted to emulate. He was the god of the desert. He was the dazzler. He was the king of the desert. And what had happened when they were kicked out, Set was not initially an evil figure, but he was more of a figure of chaos, in some degree a fighter, in some degree also other characteristics such as being barren and being asexual or bisexual, if you want to look at that. And a lot of those characteristics fit those foreign people coming in. When they were kicked out, Set took on the characteristics of another god called Hotep, who was seen as a personification of evil, or very much like the devil or the Satan that we know today. And so this is where you get the archetype for Satan from, as a result of the original Kemetic people having a very strong disdain for the Hyksos and the Hittites and taking their deity and ascribing complete and utter evil along with what was already assigned with Set as far as chaos. And so this is where you get the first amalgamation of Satan or Shaitan. And so as they were leaving, several kings kind of came in wet and stability was created, but it was still not stable. And so you have a king called Akhenaten that comes on. And Akhenaten is a reformer. He is attempting to try to reform Kemet and bring it back to a truer monotheistic philosophy. And he looks into the coffin text and the pyramid text and the older text, and he starts bringing these teachings out. However, he cannot do it through Amen because of the priesthood that controls Amen. So he tries to redefine Amen by taking Amen and Ra and combining them together and creating the Aten. And the Aten is basically Amen manifested as Ra, or creation manifested in the form of the sun. This is not a new concept. The concept had already been around with Amen and Ra, but he was redefining it to create more of a balanced and more peaceful scenario. However, this did not sit well with the priesthood of Amen, and so, long story short, he ended up going to the further into the northern part of the Nile Valley, where he started taking on some of the remainder of the Hyksos and Hittites, people that were already there, to help build up this religion. This backfired on him, and it gave the Amen priesthood license to basically go in and have him assassinated, because it seemed like he had thrown in with the people that they had thrown off the throne. So you have two migration patterns of these Hyksos, Hittites, Amorites people coming out of Kemet. You have the initial one where they were overthrown by brothers from Nubia, and then you have the ones that were once again overthrown as a result of the assassination of Akhenaten. And so you have these two migral periods. But you still had some who were left over. And the ones who were left over, the ones who become more Kemetic in their thinking, and, well, I guess you still have the trade pattern going here, were a group of people that are known as the Essenes. The Essenes were a priesthood that had really become more developed in the traditional school of the priesthood of Amen. But they were not corrupt in the sense of, idolatry and going into polytheism. They really were taking the Jewish tradition, or the Israelite tradition, and mixing it with the Kemetic tradition. So they took the Israelite history, which is basically a very mixed story of them coming into Kemet and then getting kicked out, but then retold from a position of where the light shines better on them, as it was a tradition in those days to connect yourself with a powerful group of people and then rewrite the history to where it fits you best. There's nothing unique about what they were doing. It was something that was done quite a bit and was done all the way up into the Greek and Roman period. But to get back to the Essenes were basically taking the Israelite history and mixing it in with Kemetic spirituality. And they did this for a number of years. They were a wide community, and they believed in practicing the principles of Ma'at, harmony and balance. They also believed in practicing something that, I guess you might say, is a cure for the disease of that humans suffer from, that the Kemetics called the 12 torments. Basically, because we live in a body and the body needs and the body wants, we have to answer to these needs and wants in the body. But once they get out of control, it becomes like a disease, and we become trapped by it, and we suffer from it. And those who are schooled in these ancient knowledges know this, and these are the things that they use today to control us, which we'll be talking about even more, because about 4 of these 12 are really pushed nowadays, and with intent. And they're pushed through the media, the TV, and they're used on purpose to control you, to make you childish, to make you ignorant, and to make you more controllable. But I'm going to read from the Neter Session, the 7th book, His Secret Sermon on the Mount. And in this reading from verse 28 to 46 is going to give us some insight as Imhotep talks to Tahuti about the 12 torments and the 10 virtues that cure these 12 torments. Imhotep: have I any revengers or tormentors in myself, Father? Tahuti: yes, and those not a few, but many and fearful ones. Imhotep: I do not know them, Father. Tahuti: one torment, son, is ignorant, a second, sorrow, a third, intemperance, a fourth, concupiscence, a fifth, injustice, a sixth, covetousness, a seventh, deceit, an eighth, envy, a ninth, fraud or guile, a 10th, wrath, an 11th, rashness, a 12th, maliciousness. They are in number 12, and under there many more, some which through the prison of the body do force the errantly placed man to suffer sensibly. And they do not suddenly or easily depart from him that hath obtained mercy of Amen. And herein consists both the manner and the reason of regeneration. For the rest, O son, hold thy peace and praise Amen in silence. And by that means the mercy of Amen will not cease or be wanting unto us. Therefore rejoice, my son, from henceforward, being purged by the powers of Amen to the knowledge of the truth. For the revelation of Amen is come to us, and when that came, all ignorance was cast out. The knowledge of joy is coming unto us, and when that comes, sorrow shall fly away to them that are capable of it. I call unto joy, the power of temperance, a power whose virtue is most sweet. Let us take her into ourselves, O son, most willingly, for how at her coming hath she put away intemperance. Now I call forth continence, the power which is over conspicuous. This, O son, is the stable and firm foundation of justice. For see how, without labor, she hath chased away injustice, and we are justified, O son, when injustice is away. The 6th virtue, which comes unto us I call communion, which is against covetousness. And when all that covetousness is gone, I call the truth, and when she cometh, error and deceit vanishes. See, O son, how the good is fulfilled by the access of truth, for by this means envy is gone from us. The truth is accompanied with the good, together with the light and life. And there came no more any torment of darkness, but being overcome, they all fled away suddenly and tumultuously. Thou hast understood, O son, the manner of regeneration. For upon the coming of these 10, the intellectual generation is perfected, and then it drives away the 12. And we have seen it in the generation itself. Whosoever therefore hath of mercy obtained this generation, which is according to our men, he, leaving all bodily senses, knows himself to consist of divine things, and rejoice, being made by amen, stable and immutable. Amen. 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 All praises be to our men. So essentially, what this is saying here is that you have these 12 torments, this wrath, this greed, this guile, this conspicuousness, which basically is a word for injustice, covetousness, and these sorts of things, and lust, and the 10 virtues. Once you apply them, and you apply them with the knowledge and the balance of our men, will remove these things that come upon us because of the needs and the wants of flesh. It's not necessarily saying that you're evil in the sense of, born evil in the sense of the Christian sense, but you're born imperfect because you're in a body that's constantly changing. And since it's constantly changing, it constantly needs. And anytime a need overcomes the spirit, it becomes basically, or want rather, it overcomes the spirit, it becomes an addiction. And these 12 torments are the things that bring about addiction and sustain addiction. And the 10 virtues are there to overcome them. So this is a science that the Essenes understood, and one that they were basically spreading throughout Kemet, Ethiopia, and the Fertile Crescent and Canaan. And so they did this for a while. They were doctors or, healers, and they were priests. They sometimes they lived in just groups of all male. Sometimes they were groups of female. There's a video, if you go to YouTube and you put in Enderazi, that details more of the history of this and gets more into the, I guess, the general meat and potatoes of it. But like I said, we have a time issue, and so I can't get further into all of their practices and the things that they were doing at those times. But the Essenes were where John the Baptist, or more properly put, Timkat, or John the Baptizer, Anu, or Anan, being an Kemetic word for, I guess you could say like a novice, but what it essentially is a person who's baptized or rebirth. And Timkat is a word for baptism. And then you have Yahshua, which is once again a Kemetic word for a deity that is normally defined with the moon, called Yah, and Shu, which is the deity that is normally described or connected with the air or the atmosphere, the space in between Earth and the heavens. And so these is where you get the names of these individuals. But also people took on names that emphasize their character. So somebody might take on the name like Yahshua because these are the properties that they were trying to emulate. And this is where they say the biblical John the Baptist and the biblical Jesus are originated from, the Essenes. And once again, to verify this information, please put in the Essenes, put in Jesus or John the Baptist, and there's more than enough information out there for you to be able to research it. And so they would commonly go around preaching the gospel and teaching people and healing people. And around the time of the Roman period, they were doing this, and there was a lot of corruption, especially in Israel. and the corruption was between the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and another group that is escaping me right now. And so the Essenes were many times speaking against these groups, as they were also speaking against Rome and Rome's power in Israel and the Fertile Crescent, as well as to some degree in Egypt. So inevitably what was happening was the Israeli king or political group and the Roman king or Caesar basically worked together to get rid of the Essenes, because it was in their best favor. Because if you know anything about the Roman Caesars and the Senate, these were the most corrupt people that any one group of people could be. And the ancient Sadducees and Pharisees wasn't far off. And so in order to protect their influence and to continue doing the things that they were doing, it became a necessity to get rid of the Essenes. And so the Essenes were pushed out, killed, and one of the stories that you can find on this is the story of Qumran, where they were basically sieged in Qumran, and this is where you find the Dead Sea Scrolls and so forth. Some people say the Dead Sea Scrolls are authentic, some people say they're not. But the fact of the matter is they were hunted out and basically driven out. And so this movement had started as a result of them, which was later to become Christianity, but it wasn't Christianity in a sense that you think it today. It was more closer to a Messianic Judaism of modern-day society, or to some degree the Coptic and the Tawhidi Church. But where they started to kind of move, as the poor groups of people were catching on to this philosophy that the Essenes had pushed around, because the Roman Empire was 90% slaves. The other 10% were merchants and politicians. And so this philosophy started to catch on with them. So the Romans and the Greeks, or the ones that were in Alexandria, kind of took this philosophy and started molding it to where they could start to control these groups of people. But it wasn't really, when I say this, I say it in the sense that a process began, but it hadn't really become institutionalized until roughly about 200 years later under Constantine. But the process began in Alexandria, which is in northern Egypt. And the process began to mix these groups of people with another philosophy called Serapis or Serapis. And so the mixing of what the Essenes were teaching and the mixing of what the noble people, who were the ones who were worshiping Serapis, which came basically as a result of the Greek or the Ptolemy period, which is nothing but a worshiping of Alexander the Greek or Alexander of Macedonia. They began to kind of mold this thing to control the general populace, because this is where Christianity was coming out of. And so the Alexander aristocracy was kind of bringing it up, as well with the Sadducees and the Israelite priests, who were also had been in Alexandria at the time of the Greek influence. So we might run in a little overtime here as I finish this up. So the point of this discussion is to say that the initial teachings of Kemet was to get you to balance yourself. It was to get you to be able to balance your body in conjunction with your spirit and your mind. And this is what the 10 virtues is about, some of the building blocks of Ma'at. As that being said, these were things that were being taught all over North Africa, the Nile Valley, all the way into the Fertile Crescent. However, you have a lot of evil influences that have been keeping this away, and it's been being kept away since the last 2,000 years. And the reason being is because you really had the same people in power, and they have mixed the Egyptian or the Kemetic sciences with their own to disguise their own intent. But if you go back and you start researching, you're able to kind of see the truth of these things, and this is what Indarazi is about, to bring out the truth of these things, to give people the truer and more natural sciences, and to be able to help them balance themselves. But as we go on this journey and perfect it, we want to, be able to enlighten these things things from a historical perspective so you know exactly where these faiths and ideas are originating. So once again, I want to say thank you for joining us. Sorry this one was running. I probably went through this one a little fast. Like I said, I'm going to get a little bit better at this blog talk radio thing and be able to get the information more concise, but I definitely hope this helps you in understanding of current faiths, past faiths, and also a better understanding of spirituality as it was intended to be, opposed to what we've been given today. All praise be to our men, Hotep, and thank you once again.